Going to the subject of today, I am very interested in and have been for a very long time, very interested in the processes of innovation and how your social systems become created. And so I've written different books pertaining to these subjects that are out in different languages, and there's still new editions coming out. And I've been very interested in how you can track global innovation and how you can see the higher level meta patterns in it. And then I was contacted last year by a McKinsey partner who asked if I would like to be co-author with him about in a book about where the world is going. His interest in doing that was partly that he had read some of my books. So I published 17 different books, but also he knew that we had this company Supertrends that I mentioned, that where we are tracking what's going on with innovation around the world. And then he said, how about writing a book about the world's innovation, which I know a lot about, and then how to change management of organizations, but also how individuals can adapt to the constantly accelerating speed of change that we're going through. So just about how the app that we have works. In Supertrends, I have to say we have a number of different products, but one of them is this app that you see here. And that app tracks the world's innovation, and our database, I think, is the biggest database of innovation in the world. It goes back 3.3 million years. So you have all these dots on the timeline that you see here. Every dot represents a critical innovation, but then we also have predictions of innovations that will dominate in the future. You could go into in a year, see a description of a predicted innovation. You can type in when you think it will happen. Then you can compare your prediction to the expert condition. You can rate how important the impact is for business, for society. You can rate, you can like. You can bookmark, and you can see related startup companies, events, news. And we have a whole news flow about innovation that is created by AI. So we use database searches to find the 20,000 top tech stories in the world, but then we use AI to write summaries of what they are about. And then we have science editors who tag them to different industries and technologies. So we have about 3,000 different tags at this moment. So this is a system to systematically track what is going on in the world's innovation. And the data, these predictions are uploaded by about 500 different leading scientists and entrepreneurs, where we try within each scientific area or engineering area to find the top 20 people, and then we offer them to be on our panel. And when we look at all this from the whole perspective of this 3.3 million back to pre-human history and to the present and into the future, there are some big themes that we see. And one of them that fascinates me is that it seems like the world has gone through 4 major phases. And the first of these 4 phases, what you call the Malthusian economy, and that was an economy where there was very little innovation, but the consequences of that little innovation was a little bit more people, but not higher standard of living per person. But then around year 1800 started the Industrial Revolution, and then suddenly you had more people, much more people, but then also much higher wealth per person on average in the world. So that was a phase that is, of course, still ongoing. We have amazing engineering going on right now with spacecraft and electric cars and windmills and whatnot. But around year 1980, there was a transition into the precision economy. So while we still have the industrial economy, now a bigger and bigger and very interesting and important part of the economy is about doing things very, very precisely. And of course, IT, so computers and telecommunications, etc., play a major role in that. But we also have 3D printing, this super accurate manufacturing method. And of course, we have biotech and genomics, which is also very precise. And what happens with the precision economy is that things get more compact. And in a lot of cases, we actually use less resources to create more wealth and more benefit. due to this precision economy. And we are working towards what you could call the abundance economy, which is where you from a point of view of just the physical magnitude of things that people want to have, more and more people say they don't want more. I know that this is still a tiny part of the population, but probably towards the middle of this century, you really have a big part of the global population who say that they don't want more material wealth. They still want better material wealth, but what they're really looking for is something else. And so I think instead of calling this the abundance economy, as you could call it the experience economy, because this is really what people start looking for as the next priority, is to get great experiences, emotional in terms of purpose, etc. And so this will be it is the next phase of the economy, and especially in the more affluent parts of the world, you are already seeing that becoming very important, with Cirque du Soleil, top restaurants and so on. And of course, it's not that one phase of the economy replaces another, they coexist. And there are probably about 15%, 10% of the world's population still live in a truly Malthusian economy, but these other phenomena are also there. And one of the things that are important to understand is that innovation creates resources. So I still see very often a common view that we are about to run out of resources. And this is simply not true. We are about to get this abundance of resources. And that is because resources are by all practical means a consequence of our own imagination, our innovation. There's a book that I like very much, written by David Deutsch, as a quantum physicist, where he says that there must have been people, lots of people in ancient times, who are lying on a nest of branches, dying because of cold weather, and they died because they didn't control the technology of lighting a fire. Now today we are aware that we can make nuclear fusion using deuterium and tritium, but we don't control it yet. But when we control that, we will be able to power the world for several billion years with clean, safe energy. So resources come because we learn how to use them. So it's not a bucket that we're emptying. Resources is the result of an exponential process. And it's exponential for this reason that, let's say you have one thing, you have a branch, then you have a cut stone, and then you have rope. So once in the Stone Age, people had that. Somebody thought, okay, we can combine these three, and then we have a new thing. And this is the way it goes. So you have a couple of things, and then you combine it, and then you get more things because you have more things to combine. Now we have 6 things. These can be combined in these different ways. Now we have more things. You can combine it in more different ways. Then you have more, then you have more, then you have more. And it took me ages to make this slide. But in the end of it, it's really like, boom, you have so much innovation. It's incredible. And this is, of course, what we are experiencing right now. And we are in Supertrends, we are tracking this also in real time. So we access a number of different databases that people use for this kind of stuff. So for instance, we go on Crunchbase, which has 1.1 million startup companies. So growth startup companies, where we can see what they do, who the management is, who the founders are, when they get funding, what is the market cap each time they get funding. We go to Google Scholar for scientific activity. We go to other databases to track what is going on in established media. We track what goes on social media and so on. And on the basis of that, by combining all this input from all these databases, we take that into a single database format, and then we can create, for instance, a PowerPoint presentation of a market of 100 pages. And that takes us, the first time we do it, it takes us something like 2 days, where we had to sit with an expert. But then once we've done it, we can go out and just do an automated repeat. And then we create a PowerPoint presentation in about 15 minutes or so. And we can also do all other kinds of visual representations just running on repeat. So we can really track markets the way that CNBC and Bloomberg are tracking what is going on in financial markets. And then we can also take some of the tags. Here I've taken the tags called cultured meat, agriculture, cell agriculture, farming, and aquaculture. And then we can have a visual flight into the most likely future and see all the different technology breakthroughs that will happen there. So of course, looking at this all the time, and I just spent this last weekend, a lot of hours just going through the headlines of 1,700 predictions that we had, just to get into my mind what's going on there. And it's a lot. And then we are building strategy rooms, and we're doing that right now. We're opening a new office in Copenhagen quite soon. We have a small one now, but we're opening a bigger one. And we have an office in Zug in Switzerland. We're opening another one in Zurich, and probably opening in New York quite soon, and so on. So lots of stuff going on. So if we look at the different technologies, what we see is a lot of it is about making stuff compact. And I mentioned that before, but what you see here is 6 different examples among thousands, but 6 different examples of the precision economy. The first one you see is vertical farming, where we can do farming that is about 200 times as efficient per square meter as traditional farming. Then you have cultured meat, where you have meat growing in stainless steel tanks. If all meat production in Germany was made this way, you could save land equivalent to 6 times the area of Germany. Then you have nuclear fusion, where our experts are now predicting that this will work continuously in an experimental reactor in about 4 years. And then it will take another, so like 10 to 20 years, probably maybe 15 years, until people will get power from nuclear fusion. But one nuclear fusion reactor will provide the same amount of power as several square kilometers of solar panels, for instance. And nuclear fusion will be much more reliable. You can turn it up and down and on and off at will within seconds. You have 3D printing, where we can manufacture with so great precision. You have the whole genomics biotech revolution that makes the way we do healthcare much more compact. And then you have the trio IoT, so Internet of Things and big data and AI, which is like magic dust that we use to put sensors on dead devices, and then connect them like with a nervous system, and then analyze all the signals that come in, and use artificial intelligence to optimize what they do, optimize maintenance, optimize turning on and off, etc., etc. So we are kind of making the dead life world alive with these technologies, but that also makes it a lot more efficient. And then we have the experience technology or the experience economy, as I said. And I just came across a Danish restaurant, Alchemist. And it's just funny when you go on the website to see that you buy tickets like you would buy tickets to a sport events and so on. And then when you come in, you have this amazing spiel with different sounds and surround sounds and visual representations of different nature sceneries and so all around you, and you move from room to room and have all these different meals. So the experience economy is going to grow a lot, and of course a lot of the jobs in it are not very high paying. Having said that, one of the richest people over the last couple of decades have been Bernard Arnault, who is the founder of LVMH, which is a luxury conglomerate. So I think that 20 years from now, some of the most successful company in the world will be within the experience company. And for instance, Netflix is that. So there you go. So again, abundance is a part of what we are moving towards. And I think there are 10 very important market transitions that are, of course, important for how we act commercially and what we pursue in terms of science and development, but which also have an impact about how we should behave as individuals. So the first thing is that things get divided into micro objects. And I have to use Spotify as an example here because they cover all the bases. So I kind of assume maybe, I don't know if we can do an online poll here, but I kind of assume that you're pretty much all using Spotify, at least I am. So if you take the way music was born when I was young, it was bought when I was young, you would buy an LP, which for the young ones of you, you're probably all pretty young, but it's a big piece of plastic. And that's big piece of plastic might have 10, 15 songs, and maybe you only really wanted one, but you have to buy this big piece of plastic to get them. But then you've got iTunes, you could buy the songs individually, and then with Spotify and similar services, you get the songs as a service. The next thing that can happen is that you can maybe remove the drummer because you like the song except the drums, and then you can have AI to add another kind of drums, or you can use some software to make it yourself, or you can have it to add drumming in the style of some famous drummer, and then the software automatically does that. So we disaggregate all the time, breaking things into smaller objects. Same what we do with work. We have a forecast on the super trend line that by 2060, I think it is, half of all jobs in the US will be the gig economy. So people will be working independently, selling their services to tons of different clients. So you don't ask who you're working for, you ask what are you working on right now, because you're working for many people on many different projects at any given time. Second thing is that these micro objects are traded freely on open platforms. And Spotify, by the way, is an open platform in the sense that you have all kinds of labels represented there. So you don't care what the label is, you care what the music is, and they do that. You have ratings very often. You have ratings in Uber, you have ratings in 99 Designs, and you rate in Spotify by, for instance, adding something to the playlist. When you do that, it says, well, he likes that, maybe he likes this too. And then as a service, so we go from things being delivered in bulk to being delivered as a service, Spotify again. But also, electricity is power as a service, water and tap water is water as a service. Our great grandparents would go out and then carry water in buckets. So things are becoming as a service. I'm still waiting for the wine tap in my home. That would be nice. Wine as a service. Maybe that would be a good political platform. I'm just thinking loud here. Then automation, that bigger parts of the whole process is done automatically. And interestingly, I was just told this morning that Spotify has a big project to create about 20% of the music with AI, so they don't have to pay any royalties. And I'm kind of, they offer me some playlist now with kind of Musak elevator music, where I think, is this a computer that's doing this, or is this really people? So, you have lots and lots of cases of automation in every kind of business. But I did mention artificial intelligence here. So not only can that create the music, but it can also look at, Lars Tvede, he likes Scandinavian jazz. What else do people who like that like? Okay, they like this, and then they propose me things that are in the vicinity of my knowledge, and then I learn about that, and they can see how I respond and so on. You have disintermediation, where you cut out different elements of the value chain. You create network effects, and this is something I think that in any business you have to think about. Is there anything we do where we could create some kind of network effect? And very often does, and that can make all the difference. But you can also, and I'll come back to that, tap into network effects with your personal behavior. Then the segment of one marketing, where in business school you learn about market segmentation, and it's still a relevant thing, but with automation and artificial intelligence, it becomes easier and easier to deliver things that are completely personalized. And I am convinced, for instance, that the music that is offered to me, proposed to me by Spotify, is completely unique. There is only that list, that combination of lists for me. And then you get a transition from vendor push to client pull. So vendor push means that the ones who offer the products and services, they do marketing, they come out and say, buy this, buy that, and so on. But when you have all the other things that are on this slide, what happens more and more is it's my behavior that triggers a pull or a product proposal. And I think that's also a major trend that is going on. So one completely overall observation is that we are moving from a world where things were very, very much in boxes, in market segments, and etc. and so on. And for instance, you study the first part of the year of your life, and then you work until you go to the pension age, and then when you're the pension age, you don't work. But when you do work, you go to the same office every day, and you work from 9 to 5 every day. And everything is getting much more fluent now. So people continue to learn to work. They work more and more, wherever they are, with a notebook, computer, and the iPhone or smartphone. More and more people don't retire. And we saw one study that said that 50% of all people in OECD either don't want to retire when they're 65 or are already beyond 65 and have not retired. So this is also getting more fluid. So we have, it's like a market of these dots that are all kind of flowing in something that's very difficult to describe in boxes. And that's also how, for instance, the union membership is declining, because it just doesn't fit into the way much of the world is. So things are becoming 3Fs: fluid, fast, and flexible. And this is what we have to take on board and say, okay, so how do I live in this? And there's one quote that I thought was interesting, and it's from a study, which I have clearly misspelled here, but it says, over their lifetime, generations Z are forecasted to hold 18 jobs across 6 careers and to live in 15 homes. So when I saw that, I started counting for myself. Okay, so I've actually lived in 12 homes, but I'm not dead yet. But I have had something rather like 18 jobs and more than 6 careers, because I've been in satellite communication, property development, venture capital, asset allocation, a lot of different things. I just think that this is very plausible that most people will have a very turbulent life. And then you have to think about Durkheim. So Durkheim is the guy who is considered the founder of sociology as a scientific discipline, and he invented a term called anomie. And anomie is what happened to a person where the social structure that you were a part of is certainly removed from you. So when in the Iraq War, when the coalition of the willing, as it was called, invaded Iraq and removed Saddam Hussein, what happened? Everybody were running around stealing from each other. It was complete chaos, because the one structure had been removed, the other structure was not in place. So there's an example that I think all of us know about, and that is when you move away from home. So at home you have your parents, and they provide a social structure, which is really annoying. But then you move to a college, and then in college there are no parents, and then suddenly people become extremely messy. And if most of them, I mean, there are the exceptions, but most of them, they don't clean up their room. In the shared kitchen is the most disgusting mess ever, because they live in, for a period of time, they live in an anomie. So think about that. What we are going into now is that this anomie will not stop, because it's not like in the olden days where you would take over your parents' farm and then marry the neighbor farmer's son or daughter, and everything was laid out for you. No, it's going to be completely open and changing all the time. And that requires a new attitude. And as I said, lots of people already have lived like that for a long time. But I think, but this is just something worth considering. And I think one basic thing is to know your base. And I always recommend everybody to take personality analysis. So go in and test yourself on the net, or do it with some organization that are friendly enough to offer you, and look at it and reflect about who are you. So for instance, if you're a very creative person, you probably want to search the parts of the economy that are going to be most dynamic. If you like certainty and analyzing something that doesn't change so much, move to another thing. But also your values. So if you go through a lot of variation and you have a lot of choices, you also have a lot of opportunity to make bad or immoral choices. And there I think it's very important to more than it used to be, to be very clear about what are my values, and kind of look at yourself from outside when you're a little bit confused and said, okay, so the behavior I'm doing right now, is that in accordance with my values or is it not? So that is a way of having some kind of a backbone that guides you through all this chaos. And so there's in this connection, I would say there's something else that is really important. It's not that many years ago I first heard about Cartman's drama triangle, and it's been quite important to me ever since. It's a description of an extremely common social phenomenon where people automatically organize into a pattern of a persecutor, a rescuer, and a victim. And this is something that happens, for instance, it can happen in a family where somebody is always, you're playing the victim, and then somebody else is blamed for everything, and then somebody has to rescue them. It happens in the welfare state also. It happens when people are, now we have this very strong culture of people say they want to save the world, so they are playing the rescuer. You have people who are constantly offended right now. They are the victims. So I think that this is a very dangerous pattern in any case, but in a world that is changing a lot, you can very easily completely get stuck in a very bad psychological pattern. And I think that the way to consider this, how to break out of this, is by thinking a little bit like Stephen Covey described in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And now, sorry, I misspelled that headline also. And now there's another edition, which is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. So that's what happens when you have a bestseller. So what he said is that when you are born, you are a you person, and that means that you are in the terms I just proposed. You are in this drama triangle. So you are completely dependent on your parents, and your parents are sometimes persecutors, in your opinion, and sometimes the rescuers, in your opinion. That's how children are. But then when you, hopefully, when you are somewhere between 12 and 18 years, perhaps, you break out of this and take responsibility for yourself. And then you become an I person. So you say, okay, I own the responsibility of myself. I've got self-ownership. I run myself. But then the next step is to become a we person. And that is a network of people who all take responsibility for their own actions, but are very good at cooperating with other people. And for this reason, it's important to consider that successful interdependent people have more than winner mentality. They have win-win mentality. So please note the word interdependent. That means that you are independent, but you're also working with other people. So your success is based on creating their success, and their success is based on creating your success. And I see a lot of people who consider themselves winners, but they're not really true winners in the long run, because they are not making other people winners. And because of that, they can only get so far. But if you're really good at helping other people get success out of their life, these other people will support you in your life. And apart from the moral pleasure of helping other people succeeding, it's also more efficient to have this win-win mentality. Then another thing that I think is very important is to have an internal locus of control. So you have, and it relates a lot to what I just said, but if you have an internal locus of control, you have the point of view that I control my destiny. And if you do that for a while, you build up your self-esteem. But if you are in Cartman's drama triangle, then you have the idea that others control my destiny. Like, this is because of society, this is because of capitalism, this is because of the older generation, or this is because of the younger generation, or because of the fascist or the communist or whatever. And then you will all your life have low self-esteem. So really important to focus on taking ownership of your own destiny. And then you have what you call growth mindset. And there's this distinction that was introduced by a Harvard psychologist between growth mindset and fixed mindset. And so the highlights of this are shown on this chart. but she based, her name was Schreck, and she based her theory of several decades of analyzing successful and less successful or unsuccessful people. And then she came to the conclusion that it was mostly in their mindset. So in growth mindset, and now I kind of read a lot from what it says. The attitude is, I can learn anything I want to. When I'm frustrated, I persevere. I want to challenge myself. When I fail, I learn. I just said, so when I fail, I learn. That means that you think, okay, it's not good that I failed, but I learned something from it. So in that way I grew. So it's less likely I'll do the same kind of mistakes later. Tell me I try hard. If you succeed, I'm inspired. So when other people succeed, you're inspired, you try to learn from it. Instead of if other people succeed, you are envious and you want to take them down. And lastly, my effort and attitude determine everything. So this is internal locus of control. So you see all these different models and theories, they all come together into something that, you know, fits really well. So the fixed mindset is, I'm either good at it or I'm not. And that means that people don't think they can grow. And I could add a lot of other models and inspirations, but right now I come to think about the study that was done by a former McKinsey consultant about which children would succeed later in life. And when teachers were trying to predict that, they were consistently wrong. And they were wrong because they underestimated grit. So grit is, you know, determination. So the young ones who had a lot of grit, they tended to succeed. But if you have fixed mindset, you think that you're either good at something or you're not. So you don't have the grit where you say, no, I'm not good at it, but I can become good at it. Another fixed mindset trait is, when I'm frustrated, I give up. I don't like to be challenged. When I fail, I'm no good. Tell me I'm smart. So tell me I'm smart, for instance. If you keep telling children all the time they're smart, when they come with a drawing that is less than what they really can do, and you tell them, oh, that's a wonderful drawing. If you all the time tell them they're smart, then they will. You have a risk that they develop a fixed mindset. If you sometimes tell them this is fantastic, but sometimes tell them, I've seen you do better drawings. The one you did 2 weeks ago was better. Can you try to improve it? Then they'll develop a growth mindset. Next, if you succeed, I feel threatened. So these people who hate other people who are successful, and my abilities determine everything. So I can't change myself. So I think this is very important to think about that. I think a lot about what I do right now. Does that reflect a growth mindset or fixed mindset? Now we go to military theory a little bit. So during World War II, it was really difficult to beat the Germans, and one of the reasons for that is that they used what is called Auftragstaktik, and this is an approach where the general tells the subordinates, the soldiers, what they need to achieve, but is not very specific about how to achieve that. It was developed by the Prussians and then spread to the whole military tradition of Germany. Fortunately, the Allied forces had the same. They call it mission control. And it is about being quite clear about the direction and values you have, and also your rules of engagement, but being extremely flexible about how you do it. And that can, for a person, translate into not having a career plan. And so I have gone through my entire life so far without having had a career plan. I cannot recall why I have never had a career plan, but I've stumbled backwards into everything I've ever done. But it turns out when I read about these military strategies that maybe it wasn't so bad that I never got around to making a plan. So next thing is to become hypersocial. And it's something that's known from biology, that the most successful species have some kind of hypersociality. For instance, if you look at biomass, human beings and all the farm animals that we control have by far the biggest biomass on Earth. Second biggest are also hypersocial creatures, for instance, ants. So their ability to cooperate makes them very, very successful in terms of numbers and thus biomass. So in our world, it's about being good at using social media. And I have people who tell me, The social media is a waste of time, and might be for sure. But I just want to say that to me it's extremely efficient, because if I lay out something there, somebody is asking to join a meeting. Is something do you see that also, Matthias?
I don't see that. I think it sounds like a Skype call coming in.
Okay, so now I decline. So that's an example of being maybe too hypersocial. But there's a Canadian scientist called Jache, and he has made some descriptions about how the modern information loop, where you read something, you think about it, there's nothing new in that. But then you go out and write about it on social media, maybe share a link with a little comment. And then other people who have the same interest, they go in and comment on this. Maybe they send you a message with another source and so on. And in this way, the people who are part of my social network become my advisory board. So I have, if you add them up, I think maybe 60,000 people who are friends or followers on social media. So this is my personal advisory board. So this is very nice to have, and it really helps me a lot. And very often I come out with just some question, but also when I'm not asking a question or just putting out something forward, I get information back. So the next thing is learn like Spotify. So we went through Spotify earlier with everything they did, which is so modern in every possible way. By the way, also the way they're organized, because they're organized into small, very independent cells who each can launch changes to Spotify. But one of the things that we have to consider here is that the tradition of having one fixed phase in your life where you learn everything and then you have a fine title and then you are an expert in that for the rest of your life is getting less and less relevant. So that is because that what you learn loses relevance over time. And this is a study that illustrated here that shows how quickly what you learn in school uses relevance. It becomes outdated, and university and professional, and then technology professional. And we can see after 10 years that a lot of it in what you learn in school, 75% has become irrelevant, university almost 50%, professional even more. And when it comes to technology, after 10 years, almost everything you learn has become completely irrelevant and outdated. So with the consequence of that is to try to have a shorter education, get out and work, and then have a targeted micro-learning the rest of your life. Like Spotify. And there are companies now that have thousands, even hundreds of thousands of small learning objects. And then people pull that. And then they use AI to find out what people are pulling compared to what they're doing. And then they recommend, if you are interested in that kind of information, maybe you're also interested in this kind of information. This is the way we can live through life. So I think whenever people ask me about education recommendations, of course, I listen to what they're interested in, but I've never recommended anybody to take a long education. Normally, my recommendation is like 3 years quickly and then go out and work, and then micro teach yourself the rest of your life. And then when we looked at this Generation Z prediction that they would have 6 different careers, that means that during your lifetime, and I'm sorry, these graphs are a bit blurred, instead of having the old-fashioned way, you learn deep expertise early in your life and that's it, that maybe you pivot, so you change completely career to career, and you will have to go in through different kinds of deep expertise a number of times in a year in your life. And in my case, I think it's already been at least 10 times. I've written 17 books about completely different subjects, so something like that. So that's something that largely you have to do on your own. So I recommend to think about it in that way also. So this was my last slide. So I just want to end with this little thing from the experience economy, which is a thing that can 3D print stuff on your cocktails and coffee. So this is the world we're going into. So I thank you very much for your time. I'm ready to take questions.